Cool. Hi, can you hear me? Cool. I can hear me. Right. Cool. As you've just been informed, my name is Sarah Jessica Levers, and why I'm interested in giving this talk. Firstly, I recently-ish made a career change into what I'm doing now, web development. I've been involved in the deaf community for quite a while, so that's sort of two overlapping interests, really. I've never met a deaf developer in person. I have met a few online, but I'm still hoping to meet one face-to-face soon. And I thought I'd also share what this talk isn't. I'm not an academic. I'm not a researcher. I'm not presenting a new methodology, and I'm certainly not suggesting I know best practice. But I am sharing some stories and some ideas based on my experiences and interests. The sharp-eyed among you will have noticed a major abstract revision, and the original abstract was quite grandiose for what I could possibly cover in half an hour. I hope, though, that you will leave with an understanding of what you could do to help deaf developers, or would-be deaf developers, feel more welcome and included in your local Python and wider programming communities. Okay. Almost 14 years ago, I went to a sixth form college to study my A-levels. A-levels are the single subject exams that most students in England and Wales sit to gain entry to university. Most people take 3 to 5 of these. They're hard. On top of these subjects we were required to take an enrichment class. This was supposed to be a course in something completely separate to what we were studying. The idea was to show universities how well-rounded we were as students. My fellow students and I bemoaned the fact that we had to do this. After all, it was extra work and extra class, and attendance it took up our time, and it had nothing to do with what we wanted to do with our lives, after all, did it? There were lots of courses we could choose from. They included pottery, life drawing, jewellery making. There were lots of sporty options that I definitely wasn't interested in. And I remember I selected the four least unappealing from the list because I didn't want to do any, and I was soon notified that I'd been enrolled on Introduction to British Sign Language. Since attendance was compulsory, I went along to my first class and waited along with my classmates for the teacher to arrive. The teacher arrived, and I could only describe her appearance as a little old lady. She was not what I was expecting at all, but the thing that I wasn't expecting most was that she was deaf herself. I remember thinking, how is she supposed to teach us if she's deaf and we can't understand her? At the time, I had no real knowledge about deafness, and I didn't know any sign language. I remember a student who arrived late for the class walked in while the teacher was writing on the whiteboard with her back to us. The latecomer walked in and started explaining quite loudly how she couldn't find the room, how she got lost. Of course, the teacher didn't turn around, and we all uttered in unison, "She's deaf." To which the classmate actually started then apologising quite loudly to the teacher's back. And I was so deaf, unaware at the time that late student could have been me. I probably would have done something equally as silly, really. People like her, I would say, aren't trying to be rude or exclusive. People like me at the time aren't trying to be rude or exclusive. We're just so used to hearing in a hearing world that we'd never actually give a thought to what we'd do if we actually met a deaf person. And you might be wondering, how did she teach us, actually? And I try and strain my brain back to remember, because it's so long ago. And she basically just taught us by full immersion. We sort of picked up signs, I don't want to say through osmosis, was a bit more structured than that, but yeah, maybe a sign language class has to be experienced in person. I can't begin to describe how it was. Okay, so some information about sign language. Before that first enrichment class, I never really gave a thought to what sign language might be, but I did think it would be close to English and what it actually is. Just like there are many spoken languages in the world, there are also many different sign languages. Most hearing people I tell that to are shocked. They assume that sign language is the same all over the world and that deaf people from all over communicate with each other easily using one universal sign language. The thing is, they're at least half right. Although spoken languages in different countries can be markedly different, deaf signers don't usually have the same communication barriers when using their native sign languages with each other. British and American English, or I'd say at least 99% the same, proven by the fact that you're having no problem following me so far, I hope. Would you be very surprised to hear that British and American Sign Language is very different? The two languages have completely different alphabets. The American Sign Language alphabet uses one hand, whereas the British Sign Language alphabet uses both. What surprises people more, because it goes further than that, is that in BSL there are also, British Sign Language by the way, BSL, there are also regional signs, which can be thought of a bit like regional dialects in a spoken language. For example, holiday, as in a vacation, in the north of England is signed like this in the north, seriously, whereas in the south it's signed like this. This holiday, sorry, because this is lazy in the north of England, whereas in the south this is lazy. I should actually move to the side so you can perhaps see. It's holiday, lazy. In the south, it's holiday, lazy. I remember almost 14 years ago, when I was first learning BSL, I was horrified at the thought of these regional signs and by the thought of the examiners for the BSL exams who would come from anywhere in the country and ask me questions using their regional signs. However, I soon found that these regional signs were not a barrier. I found this because sign language isn't just understood using the signs, it also relies heavily on body language and facial expression as well as lip patterns. This meant that regional signs weren't a barrier to me. I found I understood them instantly a lot of the time and even borrowed a few of them from different parts of the country. Just as spoken language relies on non-verbal feedback from a listener, particularly in a one-to-one conversation setting, sign language users give feedback through facial expression and body language to show that they're following what is being signed. From what I've seen, this practice seems to help deaf people from different parts of the world communicate much more easily than hearing people using spoken and written languages. Just 2 weeks ago, I saw two people in London communicating well with their native sign languages. One person was British, using British Sign Language, and the other was from Spain, using their own local sign language. Okay, since it's the final day of the conference, I thought it'd be nice to get in some last-minute networking. So if you want to turn to the person next to you, maybe, and ask who they are. As you can see on the screen here is the British Sign Language alphabet and some questions. So to get the sentence structure right, you put the topic of what you're talking about first and put the question at the end most of the time. So if you want to turn to the person next to you and say, name, you, what? And then you can say, reply, say, name me, and then you can find how to spell your name. Oh. They're from your perspective. Whereas but then the question, that's a good question, because the question signs are from the perspective of the person watching. And then you can ask Work, where? Do, which is also the same sign as make. Do what? Okay, I also want to talk about diversity. As we all know, diversity brings massive advantages to businesses and communities, especially when trying to solve problems. As it's been said, the best way to solve a difficult problem, generally, is to get a diverse group of people with diverse intellects working on it. Computer programming is full of solving problems. It's one of the main reasons why I and many others enjoy it. It's finding creative solutions to technical and logical challenges. And we all know that there are many groups of people who are underrepresented in our industry and communities. What's a particular shame, in my opinion, when it comes to the underrepresentation of deaf sign language users in programming, is that they could actually have a mind wired to give an over-average ability to solve logical problems and could therefore be an extra valuable asset to any team or community. So what, this is something I find fascinating, and somebody at DCAL at UCL in London I've been talking to, something I've spoken to him a lot about. So I'm definitely not a neurologist. So here's my understanding I have from him in layman's terms. Our brains have a finite number of neurons. They're precious and none will be wasted. When someone is born deaf, those neurons that would otherwise have been used up in audio processing will be commandeered by other parts of the brain. This rewiring can enable different parts of the brain to form connections with and speak to each other. These connections lacking in an average brain. People with parts of the brain which have connections not observed in others are seen as having advantages. Potentially superior ability with visual processing, certain kinds of memory recall and logical problem solving, skills required in computer programming. And from that passage as well, some of my references, who you can't see on your screen, include Barnaby Lamb from UCL, DCAL, and also a paper by Hamilton in 2011. Okay, learning resources. It can be difficult for anyone to change career, even though it's commonplace for people to do so nowadays. I transitioned into this career in my mid to late 20s and did other things before. I've often thought about what a deaf sign language user might do to change career. I use learning resources, including blog posts and online videos, to learn from. Many of the videos, especially the paid video learning providers, are captioned. However, the quality of the captions isn't always great. And I've spotted many mistakes when captioning technical language. And just as an aside, I've actually, since been at the conference, noticed some mistakes in some of the talks as well, which is unfortunate. A couple of weeks ago, when I was in London, I called some on-site learning providers to see if they could serve a deaf user, just out of interest, because I knew what the answer was probably going to be. Only one provider of part-time courses told me it was very likely that they would be able to provide an interpreter free of charge. I asked if the interpreter had experience in interpreting programming courses before and had all the suitable technical vocabulary in sign language. But the person I spoke to couldn't assure me of this because they'd used sign language interpreters to interpret during various classes before, but never a programming class. Also, coding boot camps are a popular way for people to change career nowadays. I contacted a few boot camps about whether they'd be able to provide for a deaf sign language user. And out of the people I contacted, only one got back to me and said that it'd be unsuitable since pair programming with other students is central to learning experience. In London, I know many deaf people who pursue a variety of careers. One deaf friend in particular, Robert, isn't a programmer, but he has a very technical job. He's very successful, and he has his own bespoke furniture design and manufacturing business. He uses computer-aided design and then programs cutting and 3D printing machines to produce his creations. I asked him recently how he acquired his technical skills. He explained to me that after leaving school, he got an apprenticeship at a London museum making museum displays, which is how he started. But to get to where he is today, he's mostly self-taught by using a problem-based learning approach, referring to online learning resources, and occasionally finding knowledgeable people to help when he's particularly stuck on something. As you're aware, I'm speaking at a Python conference. You might wonder why that is. Could Python be a good language for a deaf sign language user to start coding in? I personally think so, and this is a quote from a deaf programmer I had online contact with, and this person thinks so too. Another deaf programmer I had communication with recently suggested another reason why Python might be good for deaf sign language users to use while learning to program. And that is that there are lots of visual libraries available in Python that can act as a way into programming. And Python could be picked up on the side. Okay, can you see? I recently went out for pizza with a deaf friend in London. The waiter at the restaurant had very poor deaf awareness. It was obvious to me that he was embarrassed, didn't want to look at my friend as he talked, and was all fidgety and moved around more while he was talking, and than he probably would have done with a table of hearing people. I think this was out of embarrassment. Unfortunately, this kind of experience, from what my deaf friends tell me, isn't unusual. Why aren't more people deaf-aware? I asked some of my hearing friends about how deaf-aware they are. None of them had any deaf friends and they knew very little about deafness and deaf culture. It seems that hearing people don't mean to be exclusive, but they don't know how to be embracers of deaf people either. They often don't want to cause an offence or embarrassment, so instead of making an effort when they see a deaf person at a meeting or party, they steer clear. And in so doing, they can actually cause the offence and embarrassment that they are trying to avoid. Like these gloves. 2 students at the University of Washington, I think it was, just won the Lemmel MIT Prize for the invention of gloves that transcribe ASL to speech. As well-meaning as this project was, I know that deaf people have reacted to this invention angrily. Trying to sort of explain the sentiment behind this, I know I'm going to fall short with this example, but I'll try and give it anyway. I see it's being like me ordering a dress, say, from an online shop, only to find that I ordered a dress that's a couple of sizes too small for me. Then I contact the shop to organise an exchange, only to be told, no, madam, that dress is perfectly sized and fits women's shape to wear it. It is not a couple of sizes too small, it is that you are too fat. Putting this sentiment aside, I don't see how these gloves would ever allow for a conversation, because my obvious question is, how is the hearing person going to reply anyway? Okay. A while ago, I asked the leader of a local meetup that I attend what she would do if a deaf person turned up to a meeting one time. She admitted that she wouldn't have a clue. So here are some communication tips for meetups and basically generally any time you might meet a deaf person. And I'm going to do what I don't like doing, which is reading from slides. Okay. Make sure you have the person's attention before you start speaking. Try to use a place with good lighting so the person can see your face clearly. Face the person and speak clearly, using plain language in a normal way. Do not exaggerate your lip patterns. This is extremely unhelpful for someone trying to lip read. However, that is something that a lot of hearing people do genuinely thinking they're being helpful. Check whether the person has understood. If they haven't, try explaining a different way, just as you would do normally. If you can't sign, you can use gestures to accompany what you say, many of which we actually use when communicating with hearing people, such as, please take a seat, or would you like a drink? Do not shout. Just as when you shout at a hearing person, it's aggressive. If the person is a hearing aid user, then it can also be uncomfortable. The most important thing is to make an effort. Remember that deaf people are the experts when communicating with you. There are always many tactics to try when an interpreter isn't available. And some tips particularly for meetups and conferences and such. If possible, have both sign language interpretation and closed captioning at conferences and meetups too. After each talk, attendees usually gather for tea and snacks and also socialise and discuss the presentation they've just heard. It can be difficult for a deaf person to participate in these conversations with hearing peers. Organisers should cultivate awareness to ask speakers, experts, open source contributors to spend time talking to deaf attendees during these times. At meetups where there are practical sessions, organisers should enable mentors to sit with deaf participants. Remember that mentors don't have to be organisers or speakers, but they should be someone matched appropriately depending on the skills of the participant. If possible, share slides and notes with deaf attendees prior to the talks to make it easier to follow what is being said. Deaf people are in attendance at conferences and meetups is currently low. People can be proactive by inviting deaf persons to talk and give talks to a deaf user audience, perhaps as a bird of a feather talk. And these are actually, tips I was actually given by deaf people who are programmers. I found this quote online. It was actually within an article about those gloves that I showed you earlier, and I just think it's extremely sad. This is Alex Liu. He says that hearing people reject the idea that sign languages are valid and complex. When we gesture, they refuse to try to understand us. When we whip out the pen and paper, they complain it takes too long. They shoot down each and every vehicle we send in trying to get a message across with some flimsy excuse to cover their insecurity. But their one and only preferred option is a non-negotiable for us. Eventually we run out of options, or more likely, they run out of patience. We go and find an interpreter, or we just give up. I think that's quite sad. So should we not be that kind of person? Lastly, I just wanted to close on, this is not a tick box exercise. It should be approached with the right heart. And this is a quote by a deaf Pythonista I've had the privilege of contact with, Ian Smith, and I really like how he sums this up really well. Okay, and I was just also asked by someone who I got to read my talk for me. He actually asked something I'd overlooked. Say if I do want to learn to sign, what if I want to make the next step and learn some sign language for myself, what should I do? And this took me back a moment because me starting was so long ago. And after some thought, I think the best way to start off would be by looking on YouTube. There are plenty of introductory tutorials available on there in all the different sign languages. I recently followed one in ASL because I didn't know any. I still don't know any. And I noticed that from the introductory video, I saw some of the question signs are different. I think what in British might be where in American. I'm not sure, I can't remember. See, I don't know. Also, I'd recommend finding what courses are in your area if you'd actually like to go and attend a course in person. I think Google is going to be your best bet for this. Sadly, where I learnt to sign now only teaches Makaton. They've really cut back on the sign language courses that they offer. So, yes, I think that's everything I need. Well, everything I'd like to share right now. I'll be around after if anyone wants to come and talk to me. Be cool.
Thank you very much. And this is the last session, so thank you for being here at PyCon, and thank you again to Sarah for this great talk. So I think we'll be moving down to the main hall now. Let's thank Sarah again.